the right back. Now, your first responsibility is to act as part of a team of four, creating a barrier to the goal. If as a right back, when the ball's here with a central midfield player, if of course you're too wide, you're creating opportunities for players, whether it be left back or left midfielders, to run into these areas. So your first job is to secure the barrier as part of a team of four. Now, what some fullbacks do is they occasionally drop behind their centre backs. This is a real no-no for a fullback because it allows forwards to make runs in behind centre backs and remain onside. So one of your first responsibilities is to always check that you're not dropping in behind your centre back unless the ball has been played and your job is to perhaps cut across and defend it then. But whilst the ball is in play, you're looking to make sure you don't drop in behind centre backs. Quick glance to the left if you're a right back, quick glance to the right if you're a left back, and just check the line of your centre backs and try and stay just in advance of that whenever you can. If players push on then, you're still in line with your centre backs, and if they go on ahead of you before the ball's played, you can just tell your centre backs to hold their line and your player's gone offside. Okay, your second job, apart from holding the line and being a barrier as part of a team, is of course to take care of the left-sided player, whoever that may be. Now, sometimes, especially in and around halfway lines, your job is to delay that. Delay the attack from this player at the same time as not stepping off and allowing him to play dangerous balls in and around your penalty area. So being able to close players down either quickly if you get the opportunity or slowly and steadily to just slow that attack down and create a barrier. And that gives time, of course, for your team to shuffle across and work with you. You can't be a fullback on your own. You've got to work with your centre back. You've got to talk to your central midfielder and your right forward in order to try and trap this player whenever you can. Now, of course, one of the biggest dangers for a fullback is if you dive in, you've released that player. And as soon as you release that player, all of your team start getting stretched and have to change their position, and this is quite frequently where goals come from. So the concept of being able to slow the attacks down and intercept or tackle when you can is a really important aspect. Now, of course, what you want to try and avoid doing as much as you can as well is allowing the player to cut in and put you out of position where you're trying to make a tackle back into the pitch, because if you make that tackle, the ball's bobbling around in these areas and opposition can pick it up. So whenever you can, you're trying to show the winger the line, knowing that as he goes for that line, you can get there first and tackle and intercept and take the ball off the player and play it down the line or into your player or even across to your centre back. But your main job is to prevent the opposition exploiting, that key area of the pitch, here. All right, that's your job as a defensive player to prevent that happening. Okay. Now you've also got another responsibility. Let me just take that off. In terms of helping your left back close his player down, because you're the player that can see everything across the line. So if I just put a right midfielder in and let's switch the ball over. So the left back now is trying to prevent the player getting down the line and putting crosses in. He's also trying to prevent him cutting inside. The central defenders are obviously drawn across to help. Now, if this gap is too open here, that creates opportunities for people to cut in. So whilst you've got to be aware of your left-sided midfield player, you've also got to work with your unit to close the gap. And sometimes the right back might end up actually coming quite a long way towards this centre line of the pitch, and actually his positioning is right the way over here, which feels a bit weird sometimes, and you feel like you're potentially leaving your player alone. Well, you're not, because you can see him. and as long as you can see him, if the ball gets switched across, you have the capacity then to move out into that space nice and quickly and bring the rest of your team. And you can see the left back will tuck in, so we can close these gaps and make sure there's not more than 10 metres between everybody. Okay, let's have a look at attacking job, or the attacking jobs of a fullback. We'll go back to our main shape. When the ball's received, it's often coming from one of three players. It's either coming from your goalkeeper, and he's rolled it out to you and you're in a position here, or it's coming from a centre-back who's passed the ball out to you, and you find yourself in a position here with the ball, or it's sometimes coming from the central midfielder when we're attacking and we've won the ball. Of course, sometimes you'll win it yourself. If you win it yourself, you usually find that you've tackled the player and you've got some space to actually go forward with the ball and use your speed to get the ball into space and bring people into the game, or even go all the way down the pitch and put a cross in. But most of the time when you receive it, you're the spare player. Okay, the forwards are over here, putting the defence under pressure. So the right back and the left back are often the player who receives the ball. And as a result, you've got to make sure that your touch is absolutely superb, so that when that ball comes across to you, your very first touch of the ball puts it in a position where you can see the pitch and you can bring people into the game. And from this position, you tend to have a relatively limited number of options when you're in your own half. You've got the option of turning around and going back to your centre-back, and in worst case scenario, going back to your keeper. But when you've got space in front of you, it's tempting to get your head down and run forward into this space. When you do that, you just make it easier for these players waiting for you. And of course, the ball is rolling forwards and towards your opponent. So one of the key skills of a fullback is to just wait. You've got a little bit of time. If this player's coming across to close you down, that's okay. We sort of want him to do some running to put you under pressure. But your decisions here are, to be really effective, relatively restricted. You can play the ball into your central midfielder and give him the option of receiving it. And of course, the central midfielder's role, which we'll look at a bit later, may well be to switch the point of play between players in the team. All right, let's bring the ball back. Your other option is to bring your forwards in, which when you can is the preferred option. So one of the skills that you really have to develop is your medium range passing going into players' feet, or in some cases, in some scenarios, being able to clip the ball over midfield into players' feet and positioning down here. And once the ball's in there, this is your signal really, once it's been controlled, to go and support that play down the right hand side. Okay, now let's have a look at the left fullback, because if that were to happen, the left fullback's job in most scenarios is to come and tuck in as almost a third defensive player, and this centre back is going to support the fullback, the right back, in case he has to turn round and come back in. All right, so the left back has got a job when the right back goes forward, and vice versa. Now, in some occasions, especially against teams who've perhaps got one player up front, or teams who are struggling, or when we are well on top, or when we're behind and we're really gambling and pushing against the team, then you might decide that you can go and support the whole play. As a right back goes forward, you can go forward as well. Of course, that's a bit of a gamble. And one of the key skills, if you look at Robertson or Trent Alexander-Arnold, who are doing it as well as anybody at the moment, they make really good decisions about when to go and when to stay. What they tend not to do is ever just jog into these spaces, because when you do that, you just bring the fullback, the midfielder, in with you, and you just make it more congested. So, basic rule of thumb: if you're going to go, go. Really commit to it and tell players that you're available when you make those forward runs. Okay, back to the right back. So once the right back's got the ball in here, You might get faced with a left back or the right forward in here. Depends on the runs really. If the right forward takes the ball out here, we've got an option. We either go into feet or we go into feet centrally. If the right forward tucks inside, okay, or shows that he's looking for a 1-2, you might be able to isolate this left back. Now, of course, trying to dribble past this left back is one thing, and of course it's an option, but dribbling past this left back, if you do get caught, we are struggling because we will get hit on the break and you're out of position. If you play the ball and make the runs beyond it, the left back becomes helpless. He's either tucking into a position he doesn't need to be, or he's chasing you and can potentially bring you down as you cut in or try and put crosses in. What it also does, really crucially, is when we play around this left back and get into these dangerous positions here, it draws a centre back out of the situation. Okay, and once that centre back's drawn out, there's plenty of space for strikers, forward players to all get in as that cross comes in. All right, so that's the perfect scenario really, that we play triangles around this left back, okay, and get ourselves in these positions and just put dangerous crosses into that space, or indeed take it in and either shoot or square the ball. Okay, so fullback job, what do you need? Fitness wise, you've got to be able to run up and down that pitch at pace multiple times. And the only way of training your body to do that is, unfortunately, to do that. Your training should, the training that you do on your own, should consist of penalty area to penalty area distance runs, so 60, 70 metres at pace. Now, you can recover in between each one, of course, but what you want to try and do is get this intensity of effort up to 85, 90%, so that your body starts to develop the ability to make those runs consistently without feeling like the lactic acid's building up and you're getting cramp. Your body becomes more effective and your muscles become more effective at reducing the impact of that lactic acid. In fact, that lactic acid doesn't build up very much. And if you watch the top level players, Robertson being a great example, in the 88th minute, he's still making sprints down the length of the pitch in order to put crosses in. Now that's tough, and I'd probably say across the team, your fullbacks are looking to be about the fittest of all of the players in terms of the distance that they might cover looking to support, especially when we're playing a relatively narrow front four players. There is spaces created for the fullback to go and become the winger. Other skills that you need is the ability to be able to play the ball over distance. As I said, those medium passes into players' feet, to be able to clip the ball down the line when you're in trouble, but also the confidence to be able to play the ball into feet, make a new move, and get the ball back into your feet by good communication and linking up with your central midfield player. And also, one of the psychological strengths of a fullback is being able to weigh up what's in front of you quickly. So if I was the right back here looking forward, I can see that there's 1, 2, 3 players essentially waiting to trap me. And if I go into that position, there's a good chance I'm going to be trapped. So sometimes just the confidence to weigh up that situation, turn around, give the ball back, let's see where it goes. Okay, these players are pushing on, and now we've got a different situation. If I can receive the ball back, I can now go into these spaces and find feet. Okay, so basic requirements of a fullback.